If you're training hard, but you're still fat, the chances are you're messing up at least one of the three things we're going to talk about today. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why you're stuck, what to do about it, and how to finally torch that stubborn belly fat. So full screen the video and let's lock in. So number one is that you're overestimating the number of calories that you're burning when you're working out. You see, the number of calories that you burn is proportionate to your size. The bigger you are, the more calories that you burn. But even a big guy doing an intense hour-long workout, lifting heavy weights, doing squats and deadlifts and bench, will only burn about 500 calories. And the harsh truth is that's barely the equivalent of a burger and fries. Now, you may be confused because your Apple Watch or your Fitbit is telling you otherwise. But a study that came out just 3 months ago has shown conclusively just how inaccurate these wearables are. In fact, they can be off by as much as 50%. That's the difference between you thinking you're crushing it and staying stuck. So the best thing that you can do is take that number on your Apple Watch or your Fitbit or your Whoop or whatever else it may be and half it. Because if you don't, you'll convince yourself you've earned that extra food and wipe out your deficit completely. Besides, you shouldn't really be working out to burn calories. You should be working out to build the muscle, because the more muscle that you have, the faster your metabolism will be. Think of muscle as your body's metabolic engine. More muscle means that your body burns more calories doing absolutely nothing. And it's not just about burning more calories. More muscle changes how you look at the same body weight. You could weigh the exact same on the scales, but look dramatically different because muscle adds shape and definition. And let's be real, no one wants to just be skinny. You want to look strong and athletic and have your clothes fit better. That's muscle's job, not cardio. Another thing to bear in mind is that just because you're sweating buckets or feel wrecked after a session, it doesn't mean that you've burned a massive amount of calories, because effort and calories burnt aren't always the same thing. Sometimes you're just hot and tired. And people, unfortunately, still fall into the trap that hard workouts cancel out bad eating. But what's that old phrase? You can't outwork a bad diet. Honestly, nothing is more true. These people will train hard, but then they'll have a giant cheat meal. I even heard a story from a client of mine last week who saw a fitness instructor handing out brownies after a CrossFit session. Now, assuming that a lot of people who have gone to that particular class have gone there to try and lose some weight, they are completely negating the effect by then having a brownie, which may even have more calories than they just burned. Sorry, it's completely irresponsible by the instructor themselves, but it's also pretty dumb move by the people participating. But listen, I'd be the exact same. If someone puts a brownie in my face whilst I'm sweating and I'm absolutely dying, I would gobble that down too. But the point being, a 1 hour workout doesn't undo a 3,000 calorie cheat day. Also, you might be surprised just how much your body adapts over time. The fitter you get, the fewer calories your body burns doing the same workout. Your engine becomes more efficient, which is great for endurance, but terrible for fat loss. So stop thinking of the treadmill or the weights room as your get out of jail free card. It's not. The workouts are your spark, but your daily habits and your diet, they're the fuel. So that begs the question, if you shouldn't be working out to burn calories, well, what should you be doing instead? Just imagine this for a second. A pair of identical twins walk into a gym. Now, don't get too excited, guys. They're the same height, they're the same weight, and they obviously share the same genetics. And more to the point, let's imagine that I give them the exact same workout program to follow. But after 6 months, one twin looks like a Greek god, while the other has barely changed. How is that possible, though? They share the same genetics, and they train together, and they trained hard. Well, here's the reality. The twins did 4 1-hour-long workouts together each week. But there are 168 hours in a week, and the rest of the time, they weren't together. That means they only spent 2% of their time in the gym, and the other 98%, they lived completely different lives. One twin only ate clean when he felt like it. He partied every weekend, he stayed up late, and he made excuses. He was Mr. Inconsistent, whereas the other stuck to his plan every single day. He focused on the basics, and he prioritized his sleep and his recovery. Same program, same potential, but very, very different levels of commitment. The point is simple. don't get fixated on the 2% because that 2% cannot undo the damage from the other 98 if the other 98 is a complete show. What you do outside of the gym is that other 98%. I'm talking about the lifestyle you build, the standards that you hold yourself to, and the choices that you make when nobody is watching, because that is the real battleground. It's not the gym, it's your daily habits. That is what separates the winners from the losers. So don't beat yourself up if you miss a workout. Missing one session is not going to wreck your progress. Living like crap the other 23 hours of the day is. So you want to focus on living an active lifestyle because that's where the real calorie burn is lying. I'm talking about getting 8 to 12,000 steps a day. I'm talking about taking the stairs instead of the elevator. I'm talking about running around with your kids in the evening or doing some nighttime cardio with your partner. I'm talking about parking further away from the grocery store or the gym. None of this stuff in isolation adds up to that much. But when you put it all together and when you do it consistently for 3 or 6 months, that's what changes the game. All these little decisions compound over time to make a massive difference. But more importantly, they're helping you to create a healthier lifestyle. And just to really make this point land, let me show you a breakdown of how you are burning calories every single day. So 70% of the calories that you burn every day are at rest. Even if it doesn't feel like it, I'm talking about breathing, organ function, thinking even. Your brain is actually the most metabolically active organ in your body. Then 20% is doing NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's the lifestyle element. It's fidgeting, pacing, it's chores, it's standing up instead of sitting. It's all the movement that you don't log in a workout app. Only 5% is doing exercise, and the other 5% is the calories your body burns when you digest food. So even if you train like a maniac, it's only a tiny fraction of the total calories that you're burning. At the end of the day, the lifestyle that you live is 4 times more important than the workouts that you do, which means that you cannot out-train a lifestyle that's sedentary and full of excuses. Okay. So we've talked about the fact that most people are overestimating the number of calories that they're burning during exercise. But do you know what most people also do? They underestimate the number of calories that they're eating. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what diet you're on. If you're not in a deficit, you won't lose weight because no diet has special powers, whether it's keto or paleo or fasting or carnivore or vegan, it doesn't matter. These diets can work because they are eliminating certain foods or cutting down the number of meals that you have or telling you not to eat at certain times in the day. But that is where their powers start and end. And you're going to find it incredibly difficult to create a calorie deficit if you're not tracking your food, because otherwise you're just guessing and hoping for the best. And hope is not a successful fat loss plan. You can eat healthy and cut out sugar and stop drinking alcohol and cook from scratch and eat organic, but none of that matters if you're not in a deficit. They are just things people say to validate their behaviors and make themselves feel better. And more often than not, it comes down to ignorance. People have the best intention, but they have been psyoped into believing some BS. They have been told that certain foods are good and certain foods are bad. It is the old 1980s Weight Watchers approach all over again. But fat loss is maths, not magic. Calories in versus calories out is the law of thermodynamics. And unless you're watching this on Mars, the chances are you're a human being. And if you're a human being, just like myself, you have to abide by that law. And at the end of the day, healthy food still has calories. And if you eat too much of it, you're going to gain weight. And another thing to say on this is that the food that you think is healthy or you've been told is healthy or has been marketed to you as healthy might not actually be healthy. Labels like natural or organic or high protein or no sugar or low fat, they mean nothing for your deficit if the calories are sky high. And I have seen salads that are over 1,000 calories. I've seen smoothies and coffees that are over 500. And I see people who used 300 calories of olive oil every single day without even blinking an eye. A healthy smoothie can contain more calories than a burger. And that innocent frappa, mocha, wankaccino that you have every day could be wiping out all the calories that you burnt during that hard hour-long workout in 5 minutes. And don't even get me started on restaurant meals. Listen, I love eating out as much as the next guy. And you see chicken grilled salad and you think, I'm safe. Until you realize it's loaded with nuts and cheese and croutons and it's been cooked in 300 calories of oil. All those protein snacks you pick up because they say they're only 200 calories. But let's be honest, between you and I, who's having just one of those? Before you know it, you've inhaled 600 calories worth. Yeah, great. You got your protein in, but you also had 600 calories. People underestimate not just the calories, but the frequency. You think, it's just one cookie, it's just one latte. What's the harm? But multiply that by every day of the week for the next 3 months. And that's thousands of unplanned calories. And then we come to the weekends, and those are a completely different story, aren't they? You can eat like a monk Monday to Friday and then completely blow it with 2 takeaways and a brunch. Listen, at the end of the day, you have to understand that life is about trade-offs, and the scales doesn't care about your intention. It cares about your weekly average. Your body doesn't track the same 24-hour cycle that we work off. It tracks your total intake. And that's why you can be good all week, but if you're bad on a Saturday and Sunday, it can easily erase your entire deficit. People love to blame their hormones or their metabolism or their stress. And those things might influence the number of calories that you burn or the number of calories that you crave. But they don't influence the number of calories in the food that you eat or the fact that you have to stick to the law of thermodynamics. It's harsh, but it's true. And no one can escape from the maths. Tracking your macros and your calories takes the guesswork out of this process. I appreciate it is not fun. It is not sexy. But once you've been doing it for a couple of weeks, it gives you so much peace of mind. It gives you so much control. And ultimately, it does actually give you so much freedom. And then most importantly, it helps you to hit your goal, which is why you're here watching this video in the first place. Most people underestimate how much they're eating by hundreds of calories every single day. That adds up to thousands over the course of weeks. You could be overeating by 300 calories every single day, and that adds up to 2,100 over the course of a week. That's half a pound of fat gained every single week just from mindless eating. And that is exactly why progress feels slow or even non-existent, even when you feel like you're doing everything right. You have to measure to manage. Otherwise, it's like trying to save money without ever checking your bank balance. At the end of the day, until you track, you're just hoping. And like I said, hope isn't a very good long-term fat loss strategy. Hope doesn't help you fit into that pair of jeans. Hope doesn't help you feel more confident this summer by the beach. And tracking doesn't mean that you have to do it forever. You just have to do it long enough to understand where you're going wrong and what your portions actually look like. It's a skill, and once you've learned it, you're going to have so much freedom. So stop telling yourself that you're in a deficit if you've never verified your numbers. Because if the scale isn't moving and your waist isn't shrinking, you ain't in a deficit, mate. It's not personal. It's just physics. The sooner that you accept that, the sooner you can actually get results. But before I go, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Because even if you are tracking your calories, there's a third reason that you might be still stuck. And that's that you're sabotaging your deficit with hidden eating habits. Here's the thing. Tracking should solve this, in theory. If you logged every bite, every sip, every little nibble, you know exactly where you stand, right? But the reality is, most people track like saints until life gets in the way. They forget to log that handful of nuts before dinner, or that piece of cheese they grabbed from the fridge, or the leftover fries from the kids' meal that they didn't want to waste, or their eyeballing portion sizes instead of taking the extra 5 seconds it takes to weigh them. And suddenly that tablespoon of peanut butter is actually 4. And then there's emotional eating. Stress hits and suddenly you're reaching for the chocolate. I mean, that's what I do anyway. And you tell yourself it's just this once, right? Except when you look back on it in hindsight, without the emotion, you realize that just this once happens every single week. Or you go out for drinks with friends and then, let's be honest, all bets are off. One beer leads to three. 3 beers leads to a McDonald's leads to a terrible night's sleep, and a terrible night's sleep leads to another takeaway the next day. And suddenly, that innocent beer has cost you hundreds of pounds or dollars and thousands of calories. And listen, I am not the fun police. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will know that I'm all about helping people to build a long-term, healthy, sustainable lifestyle. I'm a big proponent and believer of the 80-20 rule, but only if you build the habit of tracking your calories and you have the discipline to bring yourself back on track the very next day. Telling yourself that this meal doesn't count because it's the weekend ain't going to get you anywhere, because your body doesn't switch to a double metabolism on a Saturday or a Sunday. And the dark side of all of this is that even people who are tracking religiously will often stop when they're eating something that they know they shouldn't be. It's almost like shame kicks in and they don't want anyone to know. In fact, funny story, do you know, the very first lesson that I was taught when I went for my nutrition qualification was that people lie. They rather hide from reality than see the damage on paper. And listen, I get it. It's human nature. We lie to ourselves, well, for many reasons, but for one of them, it's because the truth feels uncomfortable. So yes, tracking definitely works, but only if you're radically honest. But unfortunately, most people leave stuff out to feel better or even to fudge the numbers. And that's why I say that if the scales isn't moving, just assume you're eating more than you think you are. Track the sauces and the nibbles and the bites and the little snacks, because it's very rarely the main meals that are holding you back, particularly when you're a health-seeking person, which I would assume you are if you've gotten to this point in the video. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to remove anything. You don't even have to eat any less, but you do have to be brutally honest with yourself, because the scale doesn't care how you feel. It only reflects what you've actually consumed. So if you're stuck, look at the habits outside of your perfect diet, because that's where the silent killers of your deficit are hiding. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I'm going to leave another one up here for you to watch, which I'm very confident that you will enjoy. And of course, I'm going to leave a link to my coaching program underneath this video. If you want some help putting all of this together into a personalized plan, if you want some support, some accountability, and more importantly, if you're serious about hitting your goals in the next 6 months and going into 2026, the best possible version of yourself. All right. I'll see you in the next video.